Melissa Appel, it's so nice to see you this morning. Welcome.
Thank you. You too.
So to start, we first met, it was around the middle of 2023, and we hadn't known each other before. I knew of your reputation and I knew your name, and we had some mutual connections. Since we met, when we first were talking, you were going through a shift in your career in that 2023 phase. And I was hoping you could share a little bit about that. First, when we met, the book wasn't out yet, but you were working on it and you knew it was
Yeah.
coming up pretty soon. So you published a book. I see you on the conference circuit now. You're product coaching. You shifted from being in house as a product leader. You now have established your product coaching practice. What was that shift there? It sounds like it was beginning of 2023. Can you share a little bit about that?
I got laid off.
I should not
And that,
laugh.
yeah, well, it's like, I think one thing that the pandemic taught us is that we're not necessarily in control of things. And we have to kind of go with whatever we get handed. I had a boss at Wayfair, Mark, who his favorite saying is like, if we have a choice of laughing or crying, I choose laughing. Right? So I got laid off and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And January of 2023 was like when there were news articles about people at Google having to show up at the office and try out their badge to see whether or not they had been laid off because the communications were just terrible. And like there's all this going on. I'm just like, I just can't even right now with the job search. And so I was trying to figure out what else to do. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll take a sabbatical. But then I thought I would get bored. I had been working on the book with Bruce McCarthy, my co-author. Even while I was at Wayfair, I was working on the book. And I was doing a little bit of work with Bruce because we were, working on the book and he's telling me about what he's working on. And he's like, you want to quit your cushy job at Wayfair and come join me and do consulting? I'm like, no. And then I got laid off and I'm like, so is that offer still available? You asked a question that you might ask, which is what you would tell your younger self. And I've come up with an answer, which is learn to recognize opportunities. Because sometimes what seems like a bad thing or a disaster can actually be an opportunity. I don't have to worry about choosing whether or not to leave a job. That choice has been made for me. What am I going to do next? And so that was the shift that I made.
I had wondered, I really appreciate that lesson learned that when something is going awry, or it feels like it's going awry, if you can view it as this is leading you and shifting you somewhere else and it's an opportunity. A lot of people right now in the tech world, it's a messy time and a lot of people are experiencing what feels like a downtime, whether it's been layoffs or fear that they're laid off, or many people who have been looking for jobs for quite a while. I'm wondering, when you got laid off, was it immediately jumping to, oh, I know this is an opportunity, glass half full, or was there a moment where you had to sit with it? Everyone has different ways of dealing with that. I'm wondering how it was for you.
I mean, there was definitely the stages of grief kind of thing. I had been working at Wayfair for 5 years. I really enjoyed my team. There are various experiences from working at Wayfair, but my localized group was pretty awesome. I liked the people I was working with. We actually had the most senior and the most tenured people because it was a good sort of little enclave to work in. So I was sad and I was in disbelief and, all that stuff. So I had to sit with that. I had already been feeling kind of burnt out. So I took off the last 2 weeks of December and I came back and I'm like, I'm not really ready. But then like 3 weeks later, I got laid off. So I'm like, okay, well, now what? But, I have to say, like, I am not making as much money as I was then. I'm still working on building things up and I'm still working on trying to learn how to do sales and marketing for myself, which is really hard and sometimes uncomfortable to market yourself. I'm still working on it. It's not like things are going amazing. We're all learning all the time. And, I'm still trying to kind of find what those opportunities are and think about how I sort of structure this next phase.
I did want to ask you, this isn't a question I sent along, but I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be successful and abundant in career and life. When I think about all of these other facets surrounding your career, like what is success and abundance? What I've seen for you, and tell me if this is accurate, but as an outside observer, in the last couple of years, your name recognition in the product world has skyrocketed. Everyone I know in the product UX space knows of you and thinks so highly of you. People are coming to you for your product leadership advice. And it's this really tricky thing where financial abundance may not be where you want it yet, but all of these other pieces are falling into place.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the familiarity aspect of building my name or reputation or whatever takes a while. I think early in our careers, you got to put all the resumes out, but now I don't know if that's the best way to go anymore. And it's hard, especially if you haven't written a book. Right? It's like, how do you make people familiar with who you are so that you're kind of the obvious choice? And it's not an easy thing to do. But it's weird because now I go to I live in Boston. I go to Boston meetups and people come up to me. They're like, oh, I wanted to meet you. And I'm like, that's sort of uncomfortable. Great to meet you. I'm trying to figure that out too, like how I feel about it. Cause I would say I'm an extrovert. So I like people and I like people give me energy. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know who this person is that somebody specifically wants to meet at an event. Like, what is going on?
This is bringing up, I never have asked you this, but I haven't written a book yet. Hopefully someday. It's something I aspire to do. But there's a lot of thoughts around, we see on LinkedIn now so many folks in the product UX engineering space putting themselves out there and putting their thought leadership out there. They may not have written a book, but they're putting their ideas out there. And I'm wondering, once you've read a book, I've been describing, I was doing that. I got more followers, but up to this point, none of the work I've been getting is from those new followers. All of the work I'm getting is through relationships. They already knew me. And as a book author and being on the conference circuit, has that shifted or has that been your experience still?
I still feel like the work I get is through people that I know, but I know more people now. And I think there's also a difference between somebody introducing you to somebody that you've never heard of versus somebody introducing you to somebody who you're like, I feel like your name sounds familiar for some reason. Or introducing you to somebody and they're like, wait, didn't you read that book? And so there's a little bit of a familiarity, but also a credibility that kind of come together to create a package.
Mm-hmm. When I was thinking about this conversation with you, I wanted to ask a lot about inflection points in your career and career trajectory, but I was thinking about what I've seen from you, and this may have been how you've always approached your career, but a lot of people in tech, my audience, more women in tech, have been grappling with how to put their best selves out there and how to play it big and take action. That's how I describe you, as someone who's been playing it big. Not all product leaders in-house start writing a book and start engaging
Right.
with Bruce McCarthy, your partner, and just saying you're doing this. Not everyone gets that book out there, even though they've talked about it. Have you always approached your career that way, by playing it big, taking action, or has something shifted over the last few years?
I think it's just more public now. So you can play it big in your company, right? You can say, hey, I feel like this process is not working. Can I take a stab at coming up with something better? Or I've always wanted to do a lunch and learn series. Can I organize that? Can I get different people to talk? Can I make something happen within the company? Even like my first product job, I got there and I was trying to figure out how the processes worked. And I talked to my boss and I'm like, so how does the product team figure out what to work on next? And he's like, well, the engineers get in a room and they make a list and then they give us the list and then we work on it. And I'm like, wait, what? That doesn't sound quite right. I feel like somebody should at least be talking to the customers. I feel like somebody should at least be thinking about themes or strategies or the value of these things. Like there's something missing. And so I worked with some of we had, well, then they were called usability designers, but they became a UX team, and working with some people on that side who are like, yeah, this is messed up. So we put together the kind of discover, design, deliver. There's more to this process than just having a list and making it. There's stuff that happens before that's helpful. And I spearheaded an effort to actually teach the product team about how to do discovery. I had come previously from physical products into software products. I guess I've been in product before that and kind of seen some places where it worked well and learned about user research. And it was pretty successful because we brought in a consultant and we trained the product team about how to do customer research or how to do it better. And then I said, well, we're going to do this research and then we want to present it to the teams. So I said each product manager is going to present their findings to a cross-functional team. And the people in the room were like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Now I have the context. I know why we're doing this. And I was like, this needs to be better. And I got buy-in and I made it happen. And I think we improved things. So you don't have to play it big by going out and speaking at conferences and like going on LinkedIn. You can just say like, I want to make things better. I want to try to figure out how to do that. If I'm down low on the totem pole, I want to get people who are higher than me to support my ideas and to give me opportunities and just make it happen. Some places it works, some places it doesn't.
Was this always something that came naturally to you, or do you have advice for cultivating that for folks? What would you tell people who would like to be taking more action, but they're hesitant?
Seek advice from somebody, tell them about your idea and say, I really want to do this. I'm not sure how, I'm not sure if I could get buy-in. Can you help me? Sometimes that's a manager, sometimes that's a peer, sometimes that's maybe a mentor. Try to figure out how to make it happen. Even if you're not leading the effort, if you can find somebody who agrees with you, who wants to lead the effort, and you can advise them and participate, that's also great. Not all smart people have to be the ones out in front with the microphone. There's a lot of smart people who support those people and help from the back and are kind of the idea person, but not necessarily the executor. So I think there are opportunities to form a team, even if you're not leading the team.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, throughout your career, another thread that's been coming up when I've been speaking with powerhouse leaders like you, there have been moments in their career where they've had people who have lifted them up, role models, mentors along the way. I recently interviewed Jen McGinn, who's at the VP level from a UX perspective, and she said she couldn't have done this without the people who trailblazed before her and helped her out. Have you had that experience, back to recommending people find others who can help them and boost them up? Do you have specific role models, and how did you find them if you did?
I'm going to go back to high school. My high school calculus teacher, Miss Kantrowitz, she had gotten a degree in math when there just weren't women doing that. She just really loved math. And she was telling us, especially the girls in the class, about her story and how she was one of two women in a class of like 100 or whatever when she got her degree. And she's like, I just didn't care because I just really liked the topic. And I think that it helped me from an early age just to see, oh, yeah, like whatever, just do what you want to do. It doesn't really matter what people think, right? Or who else is doing it with you. And I feel like I've taken that with me, and just said like, I don't care what else is going on. I know it needs to be done. I'm going to advocate for it. But I've also had really good managers along the way who have given me opportunities and told me where I was wrong. My first manager at Wayfair, David, I got a really bad review one cycle. And I'm just like, well, I don't think it's true. Like, I don't think these things are actually accurate. And he said, well, is it not true, or has just nobody told you about it? And so I'm like, oh. And that sort of made me realize that feedback is a gift, and feedback is the thing that everybody else can see that you can't see because you're yourself. It's like everybody's telling you you have spinach in your teeth. You're like, no, I don't. But they can see it. You can't see it. So things like that I've collected along the way, I think have helped frame my approach to things.
Do you mind me asking, and you don't have to answer, but as a product leader, when you were getting feedback, what is the biggest piece of feedback that you've gotten in your product career where you were like, oh, I wasn't seeing this until I heard it? And what did you do with that information? Where did you need to grow the most?
One of the pieces of feedback I got was don't ask for permission, just do it. And this was, it's a little bit of when people have like imposter syndrome or they feel like they're not good enough and they keep like asking, should I do this? Should I do this? And then their managers are like, oh my God, this is so much work. Why do I have to tell this person, just do it? And then like, I trust you, just go for it. Or tell me what your plans are instead of asking me whether or not it's a good plan. So some of it is that you're better than you think you are, generally speaking, and you have good ideas, and you don't have to constantly ask for permission. You can say, here's what I think we should do. Do I have the green light? Or even, here's my plan, any feedback? Instead of, could we do this? It's like, just choose something, pick something. I hired you because I trust you, and I don't want to have to tell you yes all the time.
I had wondered something that's come up now in every conversation that I've had in this interview series, and I'm realizing I'm not quite special. That inner voice that we all have at certain points in our careers and lives. One of the leaders I interviewed described this inner voice for her as a very bad lady. Not so nice, very mean. And do you still have one of those inner voices that pop up, or was that something that came up earlier in your career?
Everybody has that.
Everyone has it, and some people are really good at putting on, yeah, I'm not.
For sure. I mean, when I started coaching, I'm just like, how am I possibly saying that I'm like a coach now? I have no training in coaching. How would somebody trust me as a coach? But then I realized I'm like, okay, well, I've been managing for a number of years and I've learned how to help people without telling them what to do. That's the skill. I had to convince myself that I do have the skills. And as long as I'm being helpful to people, then I'm doing a good job. Mm-hmm. And I think that once people asked me to do more or validated this in some way, it helped with the voice, but it's always there. Like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. But then you just do it anyway. And you're like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. I have some things to learn and there's always ways to improve, but you're not going to know unless you try.
This is top of mind, and it sounds like it's something that you were doing informally already. I was recently speaking with Catherine Norman. She's a licensed counselor about not quieting your inner voice, learning how to work with your inner voice. And what she said, she has this strategy where she does an exercise with her clients when that inner voice comes up. First, she has the clients put down on one side of the paper all the assumptions that that inner voice is saying, like, I'm not good enough. Who am I to be coaching? And then on the right side, the real facts here. Like, I have this much experience. I've been in the UX world for so and so years. It sounds like that's something you're doing within your head. You might not have two columns where you're doing that, but are you thinking through what those thoughts are saying?
I try to balance the two voices, right? The two little birds on my shoulders. One's like, no, you can't do this. The other one's like, no, really, you're okay. And I try to make sure to listen to both of them because I think they're both important. Because if I thought I could do anything in the world, I can't do everything and I need some help with things. But I think they're both helpful to help you figure out where you need to learn and grow, but also help you figure out what you're good at and should do more of.
I've been thinking a lot about identity and where we get our identity from and the validation we get or lack of validation we get from others. People are in different places right now in my audience, and I go up and down at different places. But what I've been finding, what I wanted to ask you about in the last couple of years, I'm assuming you've gotten a lot of external validation from the product community, from new people you're meeting. You wrote the book, you're getting invited to conferences, like all of these things. You're getting hired to coach. People come to you. And I'm assuming this is a lot of positive validation. Has anything shifted for you? Like, it's great to get the positive validation. Other people right now in the messiness of tech are feeling like that validation has disappeared. But I'm wondering, how does it feel going from being in-house at Wayfair, now being a thought leader in the space, very well known? Has it shifted anything for you, or what's it like?
I feel like the shift is more for other people than for me, because within a company, I feel like I've acted very similarly. And, you get the validation, you also get the criticism. But within a company, I've always tried to find opportunities that are highly visible. A little bit be an extra bit of challenge. I want to work on the project that the CEO cares the most about, just because that's where I like to live. I want to make a big difference, and I want to work on something that's really, really important. And whatever the top 5 for the CEO is, like, that's where I want to be, because I want to be working on the most important things. So within a company, if you're hiding in the corner and nobody knows who you are, it might feel comfortable, but it's a little risky, because if nobody knows who you are, they're not going to think of you for a promotion. They're not going to think of you for an opportunity. You have the possibility of getting laid off because people are like, I don't know what that person does, and I've never heard of them. So making a name for yourself within a company is a good career move, in my opinion. Finding those opportunities to work on things that are visible. Like, you don't have to be the one doing the presentation for the CEO, but if you're showing up places and talking to people all around the company and forming those internal networking relationships, then people know who you are. And you can get information from those people that help you connect the dots and do your work better. This has sort of always been my MO, is to get to know as many people as I can, even within the company, and work on the most visible, most important things. So now I'm just doing it in the public realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also appreciate hearing what you're saying about the more you're navigating meeting people within your organization, better equipped you are to deal with these messy times. I'm curious what you're hearing in your coaching practice. Some people I've been talking with all of the layoffs happening in the tech world, some people's strategy right now is trying to lay low, not being noticed within an organization, because there's fear right now for a lot of people. The more that you're visible and present, some people may really, really like you and others may not. Do you hear this from any of your coaching clients? And what's your reaction to that mindset?
The folks that I coach are mostly on the higher end of the org structure. So they don't really have an opportunity. They have, and it's go big or go home for a lot of people. And there is a possibility, there is risk that you do something and it doesn't work out. If you're in a culture where you make a mistake and you get fired, like, that's not a great culture to be in. I worked with a company where the CEO basically reprimanded people for making bad decisions and for making mistakes and perhaps fired them. In that kind of a culture, if you make a mistake, you get reprimanded, people are not going to make decisions. Like, they're just not going to want to be responsible for anything. So nobody wants to make a decision. The executives don't want to make a decision. And what that looks like is they're asking the individual contributors or the managers for more and more information before they can make a decision. It just takes longer and longer, and nothing gets done. There's just a whole bunch of people waiting for decisions to be made that are never going to be made. And in that kind of culture, it's hard to function really, because you can't do anything big and you can't solve any problems and you can't really get anything done because everything has to get approved and nobody wants to make a decision. You have to figure out what to do and how to make the best of it, especially in today's climate where it's harder to get a job. But just hiding off in a corner, I don't know if that's the best choice, because when somebody goes around, it's like, what am I going to cut? I'm going to cut the projects I've never heard of. I'm going to cut the things without clear value. Demonstrating what your value is, figuring out how to work on the most important things is important.
Thank you, Melissa. When I'm speaking with people and they know that I know you, they'll say, "Oh, you and Melissa must have known each other for years and years and years." And I'm like, "Nope." We only met a couple of years ago, even though we both were living in Boston. We were both in the UX and product world. And somehow I was running a research project because I was feeling some challenges as a mom and I wanted to hear from others and how they were grappling with it. And you did reach out. You're like, sure, I'll be happy to share my story. So we connected first more about our experiences around motherhood, more so than anything related to tech. I haven't had a chance to ask you all that much. As your career has been skyrocketing, as you've been a product leader in house, you've also been balancing being a mom. And I'm wondering, how's that going?
So I have two 16-year-olds and an almost 13-year-old. So I've had kids most of my career. And I think it's helped me because I'm good at time management. I'm good at explaining things to people who do not have the full context that I have. I'm pretty good at logistics. I'm pretty good at asking for help when I need it. I'm pretty good at balancing multiple things. I don't believe in multitasking because I don't think it's actually possible with our brains, but fitting things together. And I learned a lesson really early in motherhood when I was pregnant with my twins, because I had been working 60 hours a week. I don't think I would even, without kids, have the energy for that today. When I got pregnant with the twins, I literally just fell asleep at 8 o'clock. I just couldn't. I needed like 12 hours of sleep. So I said, okay, well, I need to do something. So I wrote down a list of all the things I was working on or had been assigned. And I went to my manager and I said, here's all the list of my stuff. I put it in priority order. I've drawn a line where I think I can do. And these things I'm just not going to get to because I just don't have enough time. He looked at the list. He's like, okay, sounds good. And sometimes you just have to ask for what you need. And sometimes you'll be surprised at what people say. Because he said, that's totally reasonable. And I said, great, I am using this for the rest of my career.
And you knew the level of capacity you have. I appreciate that advice, Melissa. When I had my son, I couldn't envision a future where I was still in house. I left being in house when I knew I was going to have my son because I couldn't see a future where I could balance being embedded in house as a leader and raise a child. It sounds like you figured out your capacity and you articulated it very clearly and set those boundaries, and it worked quite well for you.
Yeah. I'm very type A and I'm very analytical. And I went through and said, how many hours do I spend? How many hours do I want to spend? What percentage of stuff do I need to cut? What takes the most time? And I sort of figured it out and, like test and iterate. But I've also, for many, many years, had a personal no meeting Friday. And I was pretty good at keeping that up. It takes a lot of discipline, but for the most part, things can wait till Monday.
Mm-hmm.
How about Monday at 9? Let's do that. And for the most part, they're like, okay. So that has really helped because even before the pandemic, I worked from home on Fridays. I could throw in a load of laundry in between meetings and I could run to the grocery store and whatever it was that I needed to do, I could be flexible on Fridays. And that really helped. So figuring out what it is that you need to have that balance and to be successful and making sure that you create that space, whatever it is, and advocate for yourself.
What Many people may not know. They come up to you in conferences and say, "Hey, I've wanted to meet you." Sometimes from the outside, it may seem like a leader like you knows exactly what's coming next in the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And that's oftentimes the perception. I do know you've gone through many career inflection points and you've viewed this last couple of years as an inflection point. I'm wondering if you can share with people, there's a lot of people right now in the tech world. For some people, it's a crisis. It's deciding, should I keep growing in my career in tech, or do I start considering other ways to still find value and fulfillment? To what degree did you view this as a real career inflection point, and how did you start thinking through what was coming next?
I'm trying to decide if it's a career inflection point or a midlife crisis.
Is there really much difference?
People at a certain point say, am I doing what I really want to be doing? And some people have that choice made for them by getting laid off, or some people make the choice. It is a career inflection for me. I could possibly go and get a full-time in-house job somewhere. I don't know. As long as I get to do what I like doing. And I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what that is. For me, it's helping teams and improving culture and improving process, helping people who know what good looks like to roll it out. And that involves getting alignments with different disciplines and all these things that I write about in the book and that I've developed my craft at over the years recently, solving these broader organizational level problems, whether that's coaching or fractional work or in-house work. I think I know what I'm looking for now as far as what I want to be doing day to day.
I have to ask you this because it came up in a conversation I recently had with Alla Weinberg. She's the author of a book on psychological safety in the workplace. She's done a lot of work to help improve workplace cultures and team work and collaboration in house. And we had a really raw, candid conversation about where she thinks the tech industry is and the product industry. Leaders and consultants who really want to improve the tech culture and the climate for teams, what should they do? And she's really had a mindset that most organizations in big tech don't care about building a positive culture anymore, that it's really toxic at many, not all, but many, many organizations. And when I've been hearing you say, you're focused on, your book is about alignment with people and you're so focused on culture. What is your perspective? I'll just tell you frankly, when I said to Ala, for people deciding whether to stay in tech or find something else, she said, I've worked in this space for years, but most organizations don't care about the people. And I'm wondering
Yeah.
what your perspective was when you heard her say that.
So my approach is, if the leaders at the company don't care about changing culture for the benefit of the people, maybe they'll care about changing culture for the benefit of the business. So how do we connect business results with process and team culture? And that's what I've been thinking about. I did a talk at Business of Software whose attendees are mostly like startup CEOs and similar roles. I talked about how team culture connects to business outcomes. I told the story about the company where the CEO fires people for making mistakes. That trickles down to nobody wants to make a decision. That trickles down to nothing gets done. That trickles down to no money for business. So if we can make these connections between how you treat people and how they behave and what that means for the outcome of your business, then maybe we can start making some inroads to make the processes better, which then make the culture better, which then makes the business more profitable. And I don't think a lot of people see the connection, right? This CEO at this indecision company, so people don't see it, which is also the problem, that Some people have too much ego. Some people just have blinders on, or, the IKEA effect, which is if I built it, it must be great. And there's all sorts of biases around. What we write about a lot in the book is connecting with the person you're talking to and using their perspective to influence, right? Tell your idea from their perspective, and that's going to work better than just saying your idea louder.
Have you found one of the tricky aspects, and I don't have an answer, maybe you do. If you have an answer today, you're going to save my life. When I talk with product leaders, UX leaders, in concept, people understand that if a team is gelling, working well together, being efficient, having trust, collaboration, respect, only good things happen. To your point about business outcomes, have you had success? I can see with process improvements being able to show, oh, this sped up so and so. We're releasing on this schedule. But with culture improvements, have you had success? How do you always tie teamwork and collaboration to business outcomes?
One client came to us and said, we have a delivery problem. Our teams can't deliver what they promised, right? They never deliver on time. It's a big problem. We need better agile process. So we went in and we interviewed a bunch of people. And what we found was that everybody knew how long it was going to take. But when they gave those estimates, the leadership said, no, that's too much. Give me a lower estimate. So they gave a lower estimate. They knew it wasn't going to actually change how long the work was going to take. And the culture of, I don't trust you to know what you're talking about, it must be less, give me a lower number, is what was causing them to miss the deadlines, because they were never going to be able to finish in that amount of time. And the team knew they were never going to finish it in that amount of time. But that's what the leadership asked for. And that's what they were forced to give them. If you don't trust the team, they're not going to give you the right information, and then you're not going to have the right expectations. Mm-hmm. Or you penalize teams for not finishing 100% of what they promised. One, they're going to lowball you, right? They're going to say it takes less time because they don't want that risk. They'd rather come in under than over. And if it does take less time than they told you, they're like, great, I'm done, right? They're not going to try to do more. So the way you treat the team does directly impact what the team's output is going to be and what outcomes you're going to get for the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, you've helped save me a bit. Thank you, Melissa. What others may not know, I mentioned how we connected as moms, and then we were running some Maven talks and presentations together, which was really fun. And then we got to know each other even better. People may be surprised. You went through a Reimagine Your Career cohort that I was facilitating. And honestly, I'll tell you, I was surprised when you were like, hey, I'm thinking about attending the cohort. A lot of times you can't see if people are considering other directions or a slight shift. So it was really enlightening for me to hear you were going through an inflection point. I was the facilitator, but I feel like as I'm going through this, I'm also figuring things out along the way. Can you tell people, you did many activities to start figuring out what was next? What was your hope?
I think it's back to midlife crisis, right?
I can relate.
I think everybody in tech is kind of suffering these days, right? That companies don't have a ton of money. They fire people. Individuals don't have enough ton of money. How do I make this work? Should I do X, Y, or Z? And so I wanted to sort that out. One exercise that you did is like chart out your whole career, write down all the places that you've worked and the things that you've done, what gives you energy, what depletes you, and then come up with patterns. And I think that exercise was super helpful for me because I hadn't really thought holistically about my career in that way. What do I like and what do I not like? And what have I learned? It helped me see the patterns across my career and see kind of where I felt like I wanted to focus. I also read a book called The Leader's Journey by Donna Lichow, which was super helpful. And it talks about how to figure out what your superpower is. I've determined that my superpower is bringing calm. And that's helpful as a coach, and it's helpful as an advisor, and it's helpful as a leader to say, okay, we're in crisis mode. let's break this down. How do we approach this?
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I'm in a journey of self discovery, as I think all of us are. And I have the opportunity right now, as work is not 100%, I think, for anybody, to do that self reflection, that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Well, bringing it back to where you started in sharing lessons learned, that during these times that may be really hard and messy, looking for the opportunities, even just this conversation where you're being really honest about there's some things that are really firm and going well, but there's other things that you'd like to still improve. And you're right. You also said it's messy for everyone, in tech and outside of tech. The more we talk about it, one thing I'm seeing as an opportunity, I spoke to, we had never crossed paths. And during some of these trajectories, it's because, at least from my lens, I was flying high. I was really, really busy. Work was good. I was focusing on my son. And when I had this period of inflection, like, oh, the tech industry is not going to stay where I thought it would through my retirement. Uh-oh. The level of connection and people I'm meeting on a different level when we speak about that, I feel like it's just leading to much deeper relationships. I feel like you have a sense of what's going on with me. I have a sense of what's going on with you. And I know you've done this with many others in the industry. Are you feeling that too? There's a level of connection we didn't have before.
For people who are not working in house at a full time job, they're either probably doing part time work at this point, or they're looking for a job. And so a lot of people have some time to make
Mm-hmm.
some new connections,
Mm-hmm.
get to know some new people. And once we figure out this tech industry thing and figure out if we want to stay or go, and what different people making different choices, and figure out how to make it work and how to still continue to improve the world, right? We have an opportunity to make some new connections.
Yeah,
It's good.
absolutely. Where are you seeing yourself in a year or 2 years? And the second question after that, if people want to learn more about what you're offering and where you are, where can they find you? But starting with, where are you now? Where do you see yourself in the next year or two?
So I'm digging deeper into the problem that I feel like I'm gaining traction on and that I'm most excited about, which is helping product leaders or potentially executives who know what good looks like for product and don't know how to roll it out. So that's where I'm trying to aim, looking at especially bigger companies in traditional industries who are not digital natives and potentially have a department called the digital department or the IT department, helping those companies learn what the best practices are and helping them de-risk their software development and use best practices to figure out what people are going to want and use and buy before they make it. So that's my focus. And I don't know whether that's going to be fractional or coaching or advising or in house or some sort of combination. But that's what I see on my horizon for the next few years.
And where can people find you?
melissaappel.com. It was available. It's amazing. And on LinkedIn. And if they want to learn more about the book, the website is alignedthebook.com.
Melissa, thank you. This was a great conversation. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.